Well, this book came from our coffee table at home. A Day in the Life of Africa. Now, my guest could write this book, 28 years worth of days in Zambia, Africa. And I've been bugging him to do just that because the stories he can tell, and they're all true. But let's let this video introduce him. Watch.
Zambia is one of the more politically stable countries in southern Africa. Yet this landlocked country faces many challenges. As one of the world's poorest countries, multiple issues impact on Zambia's development, including one of the world's highest HIV/AIDS infection rates, poverty, and food shortages. Crossroads Missions has joined forces with VisionLed and the Canadian International Development Agency, CIDA, by providing valuable primary health care to the most vulnerable groups in society, women and children. They're now assessing medical services through these mobile medical clinics. Our core partner on the ground is Chreso Ministries. Currently, there are 17 clinic locations, 7 in the Kabwe area and 10 more located in Siavanga. Each clinic examines close to 200 clients per day. In addition to primary health care visits, another key component of the clinics is the VCT, or Voluntary Counseling and Testing, which provides HIV/AIDS awareness and testing to the highly vulnerable. The VCT rapid test is a simple blood test to screen for the HIV virus that leads to AIDS. Knowing one's HIV status is critical. It reduces the transmission of the disease and, when necessary, opens the door to secure the life-saving antiretroviral medications. Over 7,000 people have been tested at our clinics for HIV. Around 3,000 have been referred to one of our 17 people living with HIV/AIDS support groups. Well over 1,200 have started on life-saving ARVs. Over 700 community leaders trained in HIV education are caring for the people living with HIV/AIDS. Without the clinics, people would have to walk or travel great distances, in some places up to 50 kilometers. The clinics catch most healthcare problems before they become serious, dramatically improving the health and productivity of the community. Primary healthcare clients are ushered through 3 stations at the clinic. An administrative area obtains pertinent information about the client and basic problems. Next, they proceed to a medical professional who will provide a more thorough diagnosis and checkup. Then they move to the makeshift dispensary, where they're given valuable meds for their condition. In the first 2 years of the project, over 40,000 people were treated through the mobile medical clinics, more than 3 times the target for the 3-year project. Crossroads, alongside VisionLed and CIDA, are pleased that the number of people in the country that know their HIV status has tripled in Zambia since the project began. Thank you, partners. We know the results of the mobile medical clinics, which is overseen by Chreso, has contributed to these results. Please help us to continue to strengthen and change the lives of the most vulnerable people in Zambia.
My guest is the senior pastor of Gospel Outreach Fellowship, GO Fellowship, chairman of Chreso Ministries and Chreso University, brand new. Just more of this incredible story. I met Helmut Reutter in 2004. And Helmut, I am just blown away to see this video, what God has done. It's stunning.
Well, we thank God for opening doors for us and allowing us to be part of a wonderful story. You know, when I first came to Zambia, I came as a pastor. I was trained to do teaching in a Bible college, and I love to do that. Coming from a developed country like Germany, you know, we didn't really think that social work was our part. In fact, in college, very often we looked down upon those people who were putting a social gospel forward, you know. But coming to Africa, it was a whole different story. There was no social security like in Germany. And very soon I realized I can't just, you know, be on the pulpit and preach messages of hope without really getting involved and get my hands dirty in the everyday life of people. And I think the one who really helped getting the whole thing started and triggered off was Esther, my wife.
Yes, we're going to see her in video in just a moment. I had to look it up. It's Luke 18, the parable of the persistent widow. Esther saw the physical need of the people. And I don't know whose door she kept banging on, but I think they might have thought she was a little crazy.
Well, definitely,
but
yes.
You pioneered mobile medical clinics in that country.
Well, you know, Esther began to attend to the people who knocked at our door constantly. We lived in a rural area, and there was far and wide, there was no clinic whatsoever. So at first, you know, we tried to help them with transport money to go to the hospital, but that sometimes was no solution at all. And Esther said, well, I can help these people. And so she began just from our house, you know, to really take care of people.
A little room off the church eventually, right?
Yes, that's right. And eventually, you know, I mean, she said, we need to put this thing on a proper footing. And so she went to Ministry of Health for years, actually, you know, knocking at the door of the permanent secretary.
She just didn't give up.
She didn't give up, and the permanent secretary later on made a statement in a big meeting and says, you know, your wife is really persistent. And actually it paid a lot of dividends. We eventually started this small dispensary, which Esther began, started to become a mobile clinic, and we, you know, we're touching a number of different communities every week. And we still do this after almost 20 years.
You know, people may wonder why I'm so moved at this. We actually dragged you and Esther out onto the Kariba Dam.
That's right.
Over the Zambezi that David Livingstone traveled. I just learned today that the Zambezi has given Zambia its name.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think it was noon. It couldn't get hotter. And there we are in the blazing heat. In this clip, we're going to see my husband Richard interviewing you and Esther. I want folks to see her too. About your ministry, where it was then. And I think you'll maybe be able to appreciate what God has done in these few years. Watch.
You must understand that most of the projects, HIV/AIDS projects like VCT, the voluntary counseling and testing, are just located in the cities like Lusaka on the Copper Belt. Very few of them are actually in rural areas. And so we felt we cannot just crowd where everybody else is crowding in the capital city of Lusaka, but we must go out in the rural areas. And we are very hopeful that this will, you know, trigger something which is having a very, very positive effect on the communities around here.
We saw at the beginning people crowding into a building. They'd come some from many miles first to see a drama, because in those days, we're talking 2004, AIDS was not spoken. And people were very fearful. And so the African young people had to do a drama to show the seriousness of the disease and the importance of testing. And now you don't need the dramatics, do you? Things have changed.
Not as much anymore. In certain rural areas it may still be helpful, but to the most part,
the stigma is not so
the
great.
Stigma has really
and
lifted.
The ignorance. Oh, such ignorance.
You know, just in the area where this video was shot, when we first started there, we had so many problems because people didn't want to have anything to do with talks about HIV and AIDS. And yet, of course, it was so important, because how can somebody be helped who doesn't understand his or her situation? And so we had an uphill battle. In fact, when we first started, we had to eventually stop again for a while, let the whole situation cool down until we were able to come back and continue to work. But today, after a few years, you know, the work has tremendously increased, and we have now support groups in many different villages in the area. We have groups doing income generating activities like tie and dye.
You say tie and dye, we would say tie dye. These beautiful fabrics
right.
are done by the women to
That's right.
Support
So it has
their
become
families.
a movement for development. It's not just taking care of people with HIV and AIDS, but it has become a very positive force in the communities.
And thanks to ARVs and people getting this attention, we're not seeing the desperate deaths.
Yeah.
People dying like just a few years ago was so common.
Well, this actually has made us think about the issue of HIV and AIDS. You know, being a pastor, having seen people wasting away, sometimes in a few weeks, months, we just said we cannot just stand by and watch this happening. There must be something possible. And of course, that was, you know, when we first had that desire to do something, it was in the early 90s. There was nothing much one could do apart from counseling and helping, maybe giving some advice on better nutrition and do some home-based care.
Because